What's up, everybody? Today we're checking out 3 ways Trump could strike Iran. I saw on the news this morning that America has sent some F-22s in the vicinity of Iran, so it's probably going to kick off. I found this video by Caspian Reports. I think it's going to be a good one. I also heard that they're serving lobster to the troops over there. That can only mean one thing. Let's pull this up. Let's see these different ways. By the way, if you want to check out Caspian Reports, they're an absolutely fantastic YouTube channel. Link down below to the original video. Make sure you go over there, give it some love, all that good stuff. Let's get straight into it.
The Pentagon is gathering air power for a massive attack on Iran, possibly with the intent of regime change. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group is moving toward the Middle East. Patriot and THAAD air defense systems are being deployed. Non-essential US personnel and equipment are being pulled back from exposed regional bases, and over 3 dozen US tanker aircraft and heavy lift transporters are heading there.
Just want to say this video is 3 weeks old, okay? So just bear that in mind, considering over the past, let's say 72 hours, the news about America going up and fighting Iran has kind of boosted up a little bit. So even though Caspian Reports did this 3 weeks ago, and it is kind of the most likely situation for America's next attack, shout out to Caspian Reports for getting this video up in advance of what actually might be quite a big event in 2026, because I think this actually might happen.
The planning phase is now giving way to execution. Iran, meanwhile, is not sitting idly by. Russian and Chinese cargo aircraft have been making rounds into the country, almost certainly carrying arms and ammunition. Since mid-2025, Tehran has been stockpiling arms, specifically Chinese weapons. On paper, Iran now fields top-notch air defenses, including HQ-9B missiles.
They're getting this stuff, but I don't believe it's going to be effective against something like F-22s. I mean, we've seen Russian technology get absolutely demolished in Venezuela before they took the president of Venezuela. We've seen how quickly the US can overcome these instances. In fact, we had B-2 bombers a couple months back bomb Iran, and their air defense didn't even touch them. So, yes, they're getting all this technology from China, and Russia, etc., but I don't believe it's going to have that much of an effect, and I think they're just pissing in the wind, if I'm honest with you.
In practice, however, that advantage is brittle.
There you go.
Air defense systems only work efficiently when layered and integrated with other systems.
Correct.
Iran doesn't have that. However one looks at it, the fuse is now burning. The Pentagon is just waiting for the perfect time.
Yeah.
Attack too soon, and Iranians will rally around the flag. Attack too late, and the US will miss the momentum.
It is getting quite interesting as to why this is happening now. Like, why now? People will point towards Trump getting criticism over the Epstein files. Maybe it's because the economy is not doing so well. It's easier for news outlets to point the finger in a different direction. Or it could be a credible attack that is meaningful. Either way, we're living in a world right now where there's so much information that we're able to come up with different thoughts as to why this is going on. And I want to have that discussion down in the comments. Okay, I think that's really important. Also, quickly, before we carry on with this video, check out Chug, 10% off, link down below. I'm trying not to put it at the very start of the video. Go check out Chug, handmade here in the UK by a small business, free customization, free bag, 10% off. Middle insert comes out, and you can put it in your dishwasher to protect your wood. Always protect your wood, guys. Also, if you haven't already, check out my personal business, Morale, if you want yourself a healthy, functional, mushroom-based drink. But it tastes like wild berries. A lot of people are like, does it taste like mushroom? No, it tastes like wild berries from the Scottish land. I was going to say it's Highlands, but I don't think it's from the Scottish Highlands. I think it's from Scottish farms. But it's still flavored with Scottish raspberries and blackcurrant and a bunch of other incredible stuff. Go check it out, link down below if you love the outdoors and mushroom stuff. Let's pull this back up. Let's carry on.
Half measures won't do. This is the hinge on which decades turn, and what happens next will outlive everyone in the room. Conflicts between states don't just play out on battlefields anymore. They also take place online through cyber attacks, surveillance, and
They do. Let's get
US
through
military intervention. Internet connectivity has been largely shut down in the country since January 8th, which makes it difficult to ascertain the scale and scope of the situation.
That's true.
Even so, the protests are just a pretext for military action. Iranians in the streets may certainly want democracy, but Trump has no real concern for any of them, because ultimately this isn't about promoting democracy or freedom. Trump's rhetoric on Venezuela, Ukraine, and Greenland shows exactly what he thinks of the liberal, rules-based order. Case in point, the renewed American push to bomb Iran again is not driven by a sudden crisis, least of all the current protests.
Not unless they do some sort of fake kind of attack, which there was reports that people were going to do, that like, people were going to like start claiming that there was going to be some sort of big attack, which would make the general public very much for an attack on Iran. I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's going to happen. Or at least I hope it doesn't. And then you got to be a bit of a conspiracy theorist and put on your tinfoil hat to believe that type of stuff as well, don't you really?
But by unfinished business from the last showdown. You see, the first US attack on the Iranian nuclear sites was not quite as successful. Around 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium were unaccounted for. The Iranians had secretly relocated these months ago in anticipation of an attack. If further enriched to 90%, which is a relatively easy process, the stockpile could produce enough fissile core for 9 nuclear weapons. And as long as that stockpile remains missing, as long as Iran retains even the slightest ability to build a bomb, the war is unfinished.
I get that. We're definitely kind of having the reminiscent of weapons of mass destruction type of thing, aren't we? It's very much a cycle of history here. And I think with that being said, we're talking a lot in the start of this video about possible motives to be bombing Iran, which is a valid point, although I kind of want to get into the logistics of how it would happen if it was a go-ahead. With that being said, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments on why you think this is happening in particular. Not what, it's saying mainstream news, unless you completely believe that, or if it's what, you're being told by Trump or what you're being told by any other news source you're getting from, but what you believe in particular. Why do you think that it's ramping up against Iran right now? Do you think it is literally just as simple as we don't want them to have nukes? Do you think it's really that simple, or do you think there's more to it? Let me know in the comments.
Diplomats in Tehran have been trying to prevent or at least postpone a US attack by offering to restart negotiations with the Trump administration. If Iran were to offer substantial concessions on its nuclear program and its missile program, it would reduce the risk of US military action. However, America's demands have expanded since the last standoff. They now include not only ending nuclear enrichment and cutting back on missile stockpiles, but also getting rid of the enriched nuclear material they have and stopping support for regional proxy groups. Iran is not going to meet these prerequisites, and so in the coming days and weeks, the risk of an attack on Iran will remain high. At Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, widely regarded as the largest US military base in the region with around 10,000 troops, non-essential aircraft have been moved away. This satellite imagery shows the situation on the ground. The same pullback is seen at Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia.
Like I said as well, within the past 24 hours, as of watching this video, because I'm going to get this video out quite quick, we have seen that F-22s have been sent into that region. Now listen, F-35s, yeah, okay. Other aircraft, yeah, okay. There's 2 aircraft that the US doesn't send unless they really are serious. F-22s and B-2 bombers. And one of them is there, the F-22s. So I think in the next couple of weeks we're going to see something. Personally.
Do this when a diplomatic resolution is around the corner. You clear them when you expect Iranian missiles to hit that base. For instance, Al Udeid sits less than 300 kilometers from Iran, and Shahab-3 missiles can reach it in just 4 minutes. The evacuation of Al Udeid and other bases is a sign that the battlefield is being cleared for a major fight. However, the first and foremost question to ask is not what the Pentagon can do, but what it seeks to achieve. Strategy must precede action. Trump's objective remains largely ambiguous. It ranges from regime change through a coup or popular uprising to pressuring Tehran into a new nuclear agreement. If the objective is to destroy Iran's nuclear sites and eliminate the unaccounted enriched uranium, then the mission calls for B-2 bombers, which are the only aircraft that can carry the GBU-57 bunker busters.
Which again, like I said, they have already sent B-2 bombers in there. They did do that.
If the endgame is regime change, then the scope expands far beyond that. So, in the absence of clearly defined goals, the use of military force risks becoming an end in itself. Fresh off the heels of the US raid on Venezuela, some are now speculating that the US could do a regime change operation by targeting key Iranian leaders. The belief is that doing so would destabilize Iran's political hierarchy and compel remaining elements to submit to American terms. However, an exfiltration mission similar to the operation that captured Maduro in Caracas is unlikely.
Yeah, I think that would be highly unlikely. The idea of them going in and doing something like that is in Iran in particular, I think is different. Obviously, this was with Venezuela, it's South America, so it's a little bit closer to home. It's a different scenario completely. We know that the US's stance on military action in the Middle East is vastly different to anywhere else. So we'll see.
US helicopters would need to refuel inside Iranian territory due to the distance from friendly airspace and the Persian Gulf. Caracas sits close to the coast, whereas Tehran is tucked far away from the open oceans.
Yeah.
In fact, the need for refueling is precisely what led to the failure of Operation Eagle Claw in 1980. Which sought to rescue US embassy staff held hostage during the Islamic Revolution. So any overt military action against Iran would most likely take the form of assassination strikes. However, this approach carries inherent risks. For one, Iran is ideologically entrenched, deeply so. Any kinetic attack that kills or removes a figure like the supreme leader or a senior military official would certainly create shock. But it would also play into the Shia Islam martyrdom culture and thereby galvanize unity. What's more, taking out the supreme leader, as much as a symbolic figure he is, wouldn't trigger the government's collapse. Iran's political machine is highly institutionalized, and the IRGC has a contingency plan to move into position and consolidate control over the clerical security elite.
Yeah, it's basically a lot more complicated than just going in and taking someone out. I don't believe they would do something like that, America, although watch me say that and they actually go and do it now. I think it would be more a case of bombings again. I think that's America's way of just being like, we're untouchable, we'll come in and do what we want until you do regime change or you know, come up with a deal when it comes to these nuclear chemicals. And so I believe personally that it would be more bombing. I mean, the F-22s, from what I'm aware, were escorting the B-2 bombers when the B-2s bombed. Is it like December when that happened? I think late December when they bombed Iran. And I'm pretty sure F-22s were escorting them. So we could be in that vicinity again, with that vibe again, couldn't we?
Once the IRGC takes power and de facto assumes guardianship of the state, they would then select a new supreme leader. So assassinating Iran's top leader would only create a short-term crisis while rallying hardliners around the flag and sparking a wider display of nationalism and unity.
Yeah.
Another important consideration are the regional parameters. Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, and Kuwait will likely withhold airspace access for an attack on Iran. Understandably, Iranian retaliation would target these countries, and they want no part in that. But at the same time, this restricts America's options to 3 approach vectors. The first corridor is from the north, flying in from Europe American B-2 bombers could cross international airspace over the Black Sea and enter Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan.
I actually think that's the most unlikely. They could come back again from that island. Is it Garcia or something like that? The island that it's British, but it's rented out to the Americans, and the B-2 bombers were there. What was it called? Is it something Garcia, I think?
None of the Caucasian states is likely to approve, but the US could do it undetected anyway.
Yeah,
After hitting their targets, the B-2 bombers could then exit the battle space by following the same route back or by flying south through the Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
The problem with this route is that it comes awfully close to Russian airspace, and the Russians may be able to track the B-2 bombers and warn their Iranian counterparts.
Yeah.
So it's a risky route. The second corridor is through Israel, Jordan, and Iraq. Most of the US tanker aircraft and heavy lift transporters, over 36 of them, are headed toward Jordan. So this central route is the most likely. Admittedly, the Iraqis will withhold their airspace, but they lack the capacity to detect and track stealth aircraft.
Yeah.
By using B-2, F-22 and F-35s, the US could move about this route and strike at Iran undetected. This is also the same route that was used previously to attack Iran's nuclear sites.
I thought they came from the island.
Tested, it works, but it's also somewhat predictable. The third corridor is through the Indian Ocean. This one offers the most freedom of movement, but also requires the most logistical prep work. Having the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group in precisely that area certainly helps. This option is also the preferred choice for regional nations.
I could have sworn, let me double check. Let me double check the actual name of that island because I don't want to get it wrong. But I could have sworn they came from down there. I can't find the island because it's so freaking small. I literally can't find it. That's frustrating. The tiny ass island in the middle of the Indian Ocean. You know which one I'm talking about. Maybe you don't. Where the hell is it? You know which one I'm talking about, right? Maybe you don't. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But, anyways, I digress.
Because it minimizes their exposure to Iranian retaliatory strikes. What's more, by going through the south, the US could also use conventional bombers such as B-52s, thereby bringing in much more firepower. The weight of evidence suggests that it could be a combination of the central and southern corridors. By the way, this video in no way promotes war. This is a realistic assessment based on cold calculated interests and needs.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he doesn't need to disclose that. We're talking about logistics here and what could actually happen. No one wants this type of stuff to happen. No one wants any bombing to happen. In fact, it would be a perfect world where we never needed a military whatsoever. But unfortunately, that's not reality, is it?
Without the huff and puff of morals. This is what the Americans would do because it benefits them. In no shape or form do we advocate for war.
Of course.
Trump may think differently, however. If he presses on and focuses on destroying Iran's nuclear sites, the attack would remain relatively contained. B-2 bombers flying in and out would be enough.
Yeah.
However, if the objective expands to regime change, then the operation takes on an entirely different nature.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever see something like boots on the ground in Iran. Again, I say that and it could go horribly wrong and we could see it within the next 48 hours, but I just don't think we would. Pulling the rug.
If the United States decides to go for regime change in Iran, it could target IRGC infrastructure, command centers, and paramilitary officials in hopes of weakening the security forces responsible for the crackdown.
I think they would only do that if they wanted boots on the ground. I think they would just do similar to what they did a couple months back and just bomb bases again. I think they really would.
Doing so would create a brief period of internal disruption and uncertainty, but it wouldn't trigger meaningful negotiations or push Tehran toward collapse. The Iranians would move quickly to restore operational control and replace fallen commanders. That's what they did during the 12-day war in June.
Yeah.
During this window of disruption, protesters may take up arms, and clashes with law enforcement could become even more violent. But it still wouldn't be enough to pose an existential threat to the government. Only a wider, sustained campaign targeting Iran's military infrastructure, security apparatus, and political leadership over an extended period of time, think of weeks, if not months, could threaten Tehran's survival.
Yeah.
A one-off military strike wouldn't achieve anything, but a sustained campaign that degrades Iran's military capabilities and disrupts its security forces would create a power vacuum within the IRGC. The remaining elements could then be coerced into negotiation and compliance.
Well, we're getting more into the political side there, aren't we, of what we think might happen in the long run. My analysis is more on like logistically what would happen and how would they go about it if they chose to actually bomb Iran, which it's a messy thing, isn't it, at the end of the day, because there's various different options and they've already done it. That's the thing, like it doesn't seem out the realm of possibility anymore because they've already done it.
Iran's response to all this would of course be proportional to the level of damage inflicted.
Yeah.
In a low-level escalation, Iran could carry out a telegraphed limited attack, such as striking US diplomatic or military targets in Iraq or harassing commercial or military ships in the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah.
The goal would be to re-establish deterrence while avoiding a wider war. A mid-level response could involve Iran launching similarly telegraphed strikes against US military assets in the Gulf, including those in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, and so on. Such a response, however, would instantly raise the risk of regional conflict.
I think anything raises the risk of regional conflict. Any sort of implementation, even just the aircraft carriers being there, raises that though, doesn't it? Let's be honest.
Finally, Iran's leadership could go for a high-level escalation. While unlikely, this option could see an unannounced Iranian attack on American or Israeli targets or an attempt to block the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah.
This would most certainly lead to total war, but it would only happen if Tehran truly believed the United States threatened its survival.
It wouldn't go to total war. Plus, God forbid Iran touch American boats, let's be honest.
So there are degrees of escalation, and both America and Iran will try to hold their punches so long as the other does the same. Meanwhile, Israel could join the American attack and go all out, but their core mission will be entirely different. Should the US attack succeed and help topple the government, within an hour of the handover of authority, Israeli jets will attack and obliterate Iran's military infrastructure.
Yeah.
So, at the fleeting moment of hope, while Iranians celebrate the revolution and the military command is in disarray, Israeli jets will make short work of Iran's air defenses, missile launchers, drone factories, etc.
Yeah.
Israel will take out everything, regardless of whether the new government is friendly or not. Within hours, Iran will lose 2 decades of military buildup. That's what they did in Syria in the aftermath of Assad's exit, and that's what they'll do in Iran.
That's the thing, they can change that country within a matter of hours. Can't they? It's pretty drastic how quickly it could change.
So, Israeli jets will be armed, fueled, and ready for precisely that operational window.
Yeah.
This killing blow would not only decimate Iran's military, but also paralyze the new government to such a degree that it would be incapable of mounting a geopolitical comeback. That's the arithmetic of strategy. While conflict produces casualties and exhausts resources, it's often the spectators who inherit the spoils.
True. That is
Be your
so
host,
true.
Siobhan from Caspian Report. If you approve of what we do, please leave a comment, hit the like button, and mayhaps share the video.
absolutely fantastic video by Caspian Reports. We've watched a couple of their videos now, and they're genuinely really impressive with their analysis, and they try to be as unbiased as possible by giving the logistics and the reasons behind these certain things. So link down below to Caspian Reports. Go over to their channel. They're at 1.82 million subscribers. Let's bump that up. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed, go give them a subscribe and help them with their journey here on YouTube as well. Fantastic content. Check out Chug. 10% off link down below. Check out Morale as well, my business, if you haven't already. And I'd love to know what you think in the comments. F-22s have been reported to have been sent to the area within the past 24 hours. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think it's going to kick off? Kind of think it will. I don't want it to, but I think it's going to. Let me know in the comments. Until next time, I love you all. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.